value to coffee, as an example, and going far along the value chain, the farmers' incomes alone will improve by at least 250% as far as coffee is concerned. Specifically, I can mention, if a farmer goes beyond selling dry cherries of Robusta coffee to selling graded forms of coffee, the farmer improves his income by 250%. And you are enhancing the farmer's purchasing power and also looking back to the impact that is created within a household. And you take this further in terms of looking at the actual business model. This is where it becomes very, very important, because we have to move out from an economy basically dominated by the middlemen to the actual producers. Otherwise, we will continue with an artificial economy.
Very well put, to producers actively involved, maybe in industry. Dr. Kamgash, I'll come to you. You're coming from the background of incubation, and I think by and large from the Uganda Industrial Research Institute, majority of your incubatees, if that's the right phrase, are tied to the agricultural sector by virtue of their raw supplies. What are your thoughts? We've had one farmer, Mr. Dagadan, is decrying the increasing incidence of people bringing into the market additives for purpose of juice. How best, what platform do you have? Is it sufficient?
Well, that's a very good question. But first and foremost, to state a fact that we all know, and that is that agriculture is the foundation of our economy. And if we accept that and we are driving towards growth, then the focus primarily is to link agriculture with industry for products and hitting the market with things which are competitive. So our business incubation program that you're referring to focuses on looking at agricultural produce post-harvest and value adding to produce higher value products. And of course that has a backward linkage. So in one hand you're linking it to industry. You're producing products which meet quality standards. That's number one. And also you're paying attention to things like branding, because we all know, just to cite an example, Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola, but that's because it's a brand, it is produced to a certain standard, and it is immediately recognizable. One of the problems that we have with products from the agriculture sector is the challenge of how recognizable are they. It's very easy to counterfeit. So branding, packaging makes every difference, even as much as you have processed and value added. But looking at the video of the farmers, sure, I think there are two levels of intervention that are required. For a long time now, we have been struggling with the transition from subsistence farming, so the interventions that we need in terms of technology and innovation to take the household farmer is really looking at maybe implements for cultivation, for irrigation, weeding, and then a little bit of the post-harvest to make sure that at farm level I have a quality product which will give me money and therefore empower the farmer as we go into cooperatives and other interventions.
Right.
Then on the other hand, of course, you have the commercial farming. It's on a smaller scale, but it is likely to grow, and I think it is the future if we're going to transform our economy. And there you're looking at now more interventions like incubation, which lead to the farmer turning into an enterprise. If it is dairy, they go into yogurt, cheese. But at the end of the day, quality is key. Packaging and branding, those are some of the things we inculcate in our incubatees through a very structured program, right, where they're trained on how to do it best. And by international standards, not in my locality, to hit the international standard from day one.
Wonderful. Mr. Byaruhanga, you're coming from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. We know that government has put a projection for this financial running to almost 4.95% of growth. But the conversation around that is that the agricultural sector should be able to provide the impetus to achieve that growth. Do you think that the foundation is set over the next 6 months to the end of this financial year to be able to achieve this growth from the sector?
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to agree with the farmers. The video there just illustrates the potential, the opportunity that there is in agriculture. And for us to harness that potential, we must attract investment and financing to agriculture. And you must note that agriculture is a majorly private sector activity. Government can do its role to facilitate and lower the cost of doing business in agriculture. But majorly, it is the private sector which should put the money or acquire the financing. But the main constraint, we must ask ourselves, why hasn't agriculture attracted significant investment or financing? And that brings us to the issue of risk associated with agriculture. There is the price risk associated with unpredictability of prices that relate to agriculture, but there is also the production risk, which comes from the outcome, the vagaries of nature that may undermine the outcomes or the yields expected in agriculture. And there is, as government, we believe, if we can address that challenge of risk, we can help the farmers put money or make the necessary investments. So, and first of all, I think it's unfortunate that many things happen in government and people are not.
Yeah, what has government done? That was going to be my question.
First of all, dating back in 2000, government was a founder member of what we call the Africa Trade Insurance Agency. Now, African Trade Insurance Agency provides, underwrites political and credit risk. And that agency, many countries, Uganda, despite being a founder member, we have not actually benefited most from organizing or arranging financing through that arrangement, because they underwrite risk and therefore enable people to acquire financing at an affordable cost. Countries like Kenya have utilized it a lot. Now we are working with Africa Trade Insurance Agency because we are shareholders. Actually, we hold up to 10.3%. We have a stake in Africa Trade Insurance of more than $23 million.
Mr. Biaraka, before I lose you, how does this translate down to the farmers? Because you see, we coming from a year, a calendar year where, you know, for 4 months running we had severe drought. Okay. And yesterday I was listening to Mr. Ochaila. He was saying some parts of the country have not even recovered in terms of productivity from the challenge of the drought. Okay. So how does this get down to the farmers? Okay, fine. I was raising the opportunities in Africa Trade Insurance because those are pertinent for investments in SMEs that relate to agriculture, because we must get financing for that segment for SMEs in agriculture, and ATI underwriting of political and credit risk and also structuring financing for that segment, working with the banking system, helps us to raise financing for SMEs in agriculture. But on the other hand, 2 years ago in 2016-17 financial year, government, it was 16-17 financial year, government started the Uganda Agricultural Insurance Scheme. Okay, and it is a scheme which subsidizes premiums for agricultural insurance, meaning that we are working with a consortium of insurance companies under the umbrella of Uganda Insurers Association, and that consortium has agreed to partner with government to deliver a product. Okay, agricultural insurance products. Among the products they are delivering now, there is a product for aquaculture insurance, there is area yield index insurance, there is a crop weather index insurance, there is livestock insurance, there is multi-peril insurance, crop insurance, and there is poultry insurance. Right. So through that, we expect that farmers will take on more risk. In other words, they can invest in more risky but more rewarding agricultural undertakings, because someone is taking care of the risk. But also now the missing link is, under this insurance scheme, we want actually to enhance the link with the banking system so that financing can flow based on the underwriting of risk. Mr. Biaraka, before I lose you again, ultimately risk would be able to cover something that is being done. I'll go to you, Mr. Swibe, in a minute. What are some of the interventions that are needed, first of all, to ensure that the production is there, ultimately that will warrant risks that he's talking about? What are some of the interventions for the sector?
Interventions in the sector
to enhance productivity.
Number one, I think it's critical, first of all, to slice our pie to what we think is going to have the high impact commodities. I will give an example. He's come from the fraternity of the coffee industry. Now, what we need to do, it's a strategic commodity. It's of interest to everybody.
Sure.
Private sector, even government. Macroeconomic stability. If we export more, you will get macroeconomic stability. Now, where are we going to get the traction to make sure that we get the increased production? Now, solution. Number one, we need to make sure that we upgrade the production, we stimulate production, productivity. Now, we're looking at the system. If we are going to spur growth that is going to create sustainable jobs, we need to do things on a sustainable basis. We are looking at the coffee industry. We have targets. Government has set targets. He says he wants to export 20 million bags. We have moved that roadmap to 2030. Now, what do? We are saying right now we need to increase productivity. We need to make sure that production increases. We need to upgrade the value chain at production level, increase productivity. What do? Invest in technology.
Right.
Like a person who's working in an industry, if you want a product to come out, you must look at the technology that will get that product out. Now, we have three elements that are very critical in getting productivity off the ground. We need the nutrients. We need the quality seed, varieties, and so on. We need the knowledge. We need the extension. Now, right now, we have the vagaries of the weather. I'm a little bit concerned about projecting growth on the basis of weather. Right, that's not sustainable. But nevertheless, back to your question, we need to control the weather vagaries. Now, we create the critical volumes, and those critical volumes will translate into what can be value added, what we can export. Now, that is where we shall have the investment in the processing and the volumes in the numbers of factories that we shall have. Coffee, 20 million bags. Right now we are at 4.6. If we go to 20 million bags, we shall require over 1,200 primary processing plants to cover that up. That is what we are talking about to have that projection. So work on that. The value chain should be upgraded. Now, work on quality. Upgrade the value chain by volume. You make value by volume and quality. Quality, make sure that the quality that is coming through meets the international standards. You're supposed to be able to link with the market. We don't want to see. We want to have solutions to where we market our coffee. We don't want people to come and check where our quality stands. No, we don't want to have a situation like that. We need to invest in that. So that is looking at an outlook, agro-industry, an outlook. We have to work as a team. The resources we are talking about, the finances, and production takes place in villages.
Sure.
The resources must get the villages. We have to find a way. A tree of coffee is in the village.
Right. Now, Doctor,
yeah.
I know that government has made an attempt at also ensuring that, other areas of the country, such as northern Uganda, do actually tap into some of these commercial crops for purpose of production, such as coffee. What is your assessment? Has it been able to pick up? What is lacking to ensure that even when land is available, people are available, the seedlings are available, they are actually grown and reach points of maturity and harvest to feed into the industry where Mr. Kandu is playing from?
Yeah, it's interesting. Coffee is one of, if you are talking about jobs and the trying to we are seeing growth in the numbers of households that are poverty.
Yeah, sure.
And we associate. We've seen enough evidence that shows that coffee is a poverty-reducing crop. However, what we have to do is now we need to make sure that wherever there is coffee production in the immediate vicinity, we need to have processing plants. In northern Uganda, right now, most of the coffee is sold in Ruwero. So what we have to do is processing, value addition, making the linkages between production and the processing are working. and make sure that the farmer sees an immediate market. We don't want to see so many middlemen, as Mr. Kando says.
Yeah, it is in that point that I'll come to Mr. Kando, because I want to lose you as well. Now, Mr. Kando, he's talked about linking production or output from the farms to processing and then ultimately the markets. Yeah. What's your assessment so far? We're talking about intervention right now. Yeah. What's your assessment so far? Are you getting the volumes? Are you getting the quality? Are you getting, is the traction sufficient to meet your installed capacity?
Good. It is interesting to see that, things are beginning to change in a positive way. And this is not by accident. And I want to make this one very clear. As Dr. Mbo has put it, we have to be coordinated. We have to work together. The farmer who is the ultimate beneficiary, the farmer like me, has to take responsibility. We know in this part of the world we are smallholder farmers, but we are big. Collectively, we are big.
Sure.
New Cafe, my organization, has made an attempt in the last 17 years to get farmers into now 200 associations and cooperatives.
Sure.
Through which individual farmers are able to add value to their coffee by way of processing, but also to continue owning a more value-added product. That is very, very important. Not to stop at the beginning of the value chain. That makes a big difference. But go beyond that also as a farmer. A farmer must be a master of his own destiny by advocating for the appropriate policies. And in this case, we've been able to engage and work with government so closely to ensure that for the first time in the history of producing coffee in this country, we have a national coffee policy, which aligns each and everybody to a shared vision. And as today we focus to producing 20 million bags, everyone is aligned. And what is coming next is to ensure that we have the necessary national coffee law that will catch up with anybody who tries to mess up with Uganda's coffee. And therefore, it is to call for enforcement. It is to call for people really to appreciate what comes out of coffee.
Sure.
It was yesterday that I returned from China. And thanks to the work that government has done, that when I went to China 4 days ago to exhibit, New Cafe coffee, New Cafe Robusta coffee sold much higher than any other Arabica coffee that you can think about.
Wonderful.
But even at that level,
yes,
when it is owned by the farmer. Think about it. When it is still owned by the farmer, and when it is owned by the farmer, it means the country as a whole is getting real value.
Now, Mr. Kamugasha, from what he's talking about, we know that under incubation, which is quite a key thing, because, I think, in my assessment, it brings in, skills, it brings in good practices in the production processes by some of these incubatees, or SMEs, to be specific. But there are also reports that even when they get the privilege of being at platforms such as the one where you're coming from, after 6 months or 1 year, they are down. Forget about the farmer. The processor, the person in the value chain, in the processing, does not stay longer into the business. Is it lack of equipment that maybe should be able to come from China? Bring us to speed on what needs to be done to ensure that people who are in value addition keep in business, so that ultimately the farmers backwards, are able to supply and the market is able to get the products.
I think that's a very important question, and I think the key is synchronization. I think that's in whatever we address ourselves to in promoting the agricultural sector and getting more benefit, both in terms of economic revenues job creation, and generally the socio-economic transformation of our country. How do we synchronize agriculture, industry, and the market? Because if we are producing at farm level, we must have it at the back of our mind, and the farmers must know that they're producing for a market. Now then you work backwards. What does the market want? If it is coffee, what type of coffee, what variety? Is it beans? Is it processed? And that's where the whole area of the value chains comes in. So now, what do we really do? When we do incubation, we are looking at promoting, first of all, enterprise development from agriculture. And the focus is on what raw material is there, what is the best technology to produce required products. So the kind of research we do as an institution and the kind of incubation we do is really research for development. We look at what the market wants and work backwards. Whether it's a juice, whether it's a yogurt, we start at the market and then work backwards. We develop products. So most of the incubators that we work with, it is in the whole area of product development.
Right.
I start with milk. What is the best product right now that the market wants, both locally and internationally? And some of our products have gone beyond borders. They've been demanded in Denmark, and they have gone and met the local standards there.
Really?
So the challenge we have is, I think, capacity. If you put all the effort in enhancing agricultural production, there is a threshold beyond which you'd just be promoting post-harvest loss if you do not marshal the industries to receive the raw material. And I think if you're looking at averting the risk that was spoken about earlier by two of my colleagues here, if you're going to avert that risk, then the farmer needs to know that whatever they produce, in whatever volume, whether I'm a smallholder or I'm a large-scale commercial farmer,
sure,
with my 1,000 acres or whatever it is,
right,
there must be an industry which will receive at a guaranteed price and so on. And that's where the whole area of subsidies has come in elsewhere in other countries. But as we start as a country, as we march forward, we need to synchronize industry with agriculture, value addition, and all the time thinking about the markets and what the market requires.
Very well.
And I'm glad that some of our products are doing well in China. It means that someone has addressed themselves some of those challenges.
Right. I'll come to you, Mr. Byaruhanga. You've mentioned that this should be private sector business. You also come actually from the Ministry of Economic Planning. In actualizing the vision, say 2040 to be specific, where these industries should not cry and complain of operating below installed capacity and then ultimately affecting opportunities for job creation and thereby also taxes. What do you think needs to be done in terms of the synchronizing he's talking about, in your view?
You know, just like I said, for all these opportunities to be exploited, there must be resources. Money must be put on the table to make the necessary investments. Throughout the whole value chain, someone must make an investment. And that's why understanding why people don't actually bring an extra coin or invest more along the value chain is important. And understanding those constraints that deter people from making those extra investments is important, because all these opportunities are seen by the different people, different segments. Now, when you see farmers like No Cafe coming together, they are trying to address something. They are trying to come together to mitigate a certain disadvantage that they have as individual farmers. So working with, organizing farmers is important, first of all, and making sure that people see the opportunities along the value chain in terms of if an output comes from the farm, how do you take advantage of that? Okay? In most cases, people see these opportunities, but when they look at the investment involved and also the unpredictability of the supply, because there is a lot of unpredictability from agricultural supply, they decide to say, look, I think I better not, or I operate suboptimally. So that's why I still insist addressing risk in agriculture is very key, because that means someone knows I can take an extra risk to do this investment, and there are so many configurations of products which can take care of if your supplier could not meet the quota and you incur losses in your production, you operate below capacity.
Sure.
Okay, there are insurance products for that. So if you go to invest in a production, well knowing that people are going to grow mangoes, but you take a product which guarantees that in the event that you don't get adequate supply of mangoes and you incur losses in your operations, someone is going to cushion you on that risk. So some people are underrating, and that's why, for me, I see a lot of opportunity in, for example, as I told you, we want to optimize our shareholding in Africa Trade Insurance Agency, for example, because we have excess capacity. We have room for underwriting capacity for Uganda. Kenyans have seized that opportunity.
Sure.
Ugandans, we are sleeping. So if we can say so, and now the country office for ATI is now working on products with the banking sector, and SME products. So if we can develop SMEs for agro-processing and address the issue of financing for those SMEs such that they can get low-cost financing, you'll get people taking on more investment in agro-processing.
All right.
And they will not fear taking the risk of operating suboptimally, because someone may cushion them against that risk of not operating optimally because of poor or inadequate inputs.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Dr. Mbao, I'll come to you on the issue of research, ultimately reaching the farmers. Well, I know you do research not as in narrow, but you are the same team ultimately. Why is it a problem? This is my question to you. Why is it a problem for most farmers and farmer organizations to obtain research output and effectively apply it on the farm, so that this constraint on productivity and participation by way of jobs and ultimately supply to the value chain in terms of processing is achieved? Why is it a problem that most of the farmers continue to get inputs which cannot even guarantee them 40% output?
Yes, please. Thank you, Rain. For research to be translated into a product that can be taken up by farmers, there must be a mechanism for linking research, and then there is a middle person who is knowledgeable, who's trained, technical, extension, and then that person is going to advise the farmer on how to use. So that linkage, unfortunately, we've had with the liberalization, we've distorted that. So now what we have to do is the farmers are linking directly with the sources of technology and so on. If I'm in Kituza, and I've come up with a very wonderful variety of coffee, which is disease resistant, I will wait for, there must be a mechanism of passing that variety through the extension system. The person who is knowledgeable will tell the farmer how to handle this to make sure that the farmer gets the output, the actual result retained out of that new variety. However, but right now we don't have that. But and then the other side is the ability to pay for the products. A clone, a seedling costs 400. Now we are seeing figures showing that most of the farmers are now a subsistence farmer. If a subsistence farmer has no capacity to purchase, so that is paying for that research output. When it comes out on the market, becomes a problem. And for the farmers who have the ability to purchase, getting access to it becomes a problem.
How can they have a comprehensive access? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Then the other issue is that we've seen some result in where we have the government has positively addressed the issue by saying, okay, if there is a challenge of purchasing power, we've seen distribution of inputs, and indeed we are seeing dividends of that. The profit that has been planted by NADC or OWC, we are seeing now, we are moving from 3.5 that has survived, the coffee that has survived, from 3.5 million bags to 4.6. And that as a result of a delivery mechanism that has linked the source of technology and bringing it to the farmers. So we are seeing dividends. So that is one of the critical things. But right now, we don't need to, the solution lies in developing those delivery mechanisms of making sure that the resources that we want to, that the research resources get where they are supposed to be utilized.
Sure.
A good seed, a good coffee seedling, a good tea seedling is supposed to be planted, and we want to see, instead of producing 600 grams of coffee, We want to see that seedling, I mean, yield the around the 1.5 kilograms of coffee.
And that's where government should come in.
That is where we are saying,
yes, yes.
Yeah.
How best, Mr. Diarra, the role of the private sector is biased towards profit.
Yeah.
Comprehensive participation that can achieve economic development should be part of the public sector. What do you think in your vision? You're spending a lot of money, in excess of £1 trillion shillings, towards supporting activities of NADS and operational wealth creation. What do you want to see in terms of ensuring that farmers have the quality inputs, and inputs that are not just delivered but are grown, are taken care of, and are profitable at the end of the day?
Now, of course I come from government, but a critical look at some of the interventions makes us think that we have room for improvement or rethinking. First of all, I can tell you, handouts are not always the most efficient way to deliver an intervention. Actually, they distort incentives and the reward system.
Sure.
Okay? Because the moment, and this is what we are saying, government, by the way, government means well. So in all its omissions and commissions, you need to understand government actually intends, acts in good faith and means well. But sometimes in that effort, you get a number of people who may benefit from information asymmetries, you get rent-seeking tendencies, and all that. And these are challenges that are undermining the extent to which government interventions, particularly in delivering handouts, direct inputs or intervention, comes in. You get challenges. So for me, I think we need to think more about the most efficient way to deliver a government intervention, a way that will not distort incentives. Because the moment you distort incentives, okay, and the reward system, you are going to get inefficiencies. Okay? And there is inefficiencies. And the more we scrutinize these government programs on how we can avoid inefficiencies, it's important. I have ideas, but probably...
Well, I'll come to you to pick those ideas in a minute. Maybe, Mr. Kamgasha, when you have people making attempt at value addition, and within 12 to 18 months, the skill they've acquired in analyzing inputs, in processing them, and factoring their margin, they run out of business. Does it mean the interventions that we're talking about in terms of inputs and supplies, or the other side of the market? Because I am sure the demand for agricultural products are insatiable. We are having lots of imports in excess of £500 billion shillings on agricultural imports into the country alone, commodities. What needs to be done to ensure that the processes that you're training continue processing for the market?
Well, first of all, to correct maybe an error.
Okay. Just a minute.
To bring you up to date. The truth of the matter is that a lot of the incubatees, the vast majority of the incubatees we've taken on, have started up very successful enterprises which are producing products that are already in the market. And for me, it is extremely encouraging to go to any of our supermarket chains in town and find some of these products competing healthily with imports, because that's one of our focuses, import substitution. And the raw material stock is, for most of them, from agriculture. Some of them are not food products, some of them are cosmetics, but of agricultural origin.
Mr. Kamgasha, we see some of them actually on the shelves, but maybe for purpose of educating us a little more, are you able to tell how much you're able to put out in a year out of training, about how many SMEs? Are they 50, 100, so that maybe others out there can get motivated?
I don't have statistics on me here right now, but the success rate is quite high, and the products speak for themselves, both in terms of quality. However, I have to add that, as my neighbor here has talked about earlier, we need to invest a lot more to upscale some of these operations, because when you transition from agriculture to industry and production, one of the keys to your success is the scale of operation.
Sure.
And the scale at which you operate will actually either enhance your risk or reduce it. Whether I'm a farmer, if I'm working on 1 acre and someone is on 100, our risks are extremely different.
Yeah.
And our ability to absorb these shocks which come from, on the side of agriculture, we're looking at seasonal variations. But in terms of industry, we're trying to grow them.
All right. Well, fair enough. I'll be back to you again.
Yes.
We have a farmer who's following this discussion, and my colleague Maurice will be able to share with us. Maurice, bring us to speed with the farmer in front of you. These thought processes sinking into his expectations?
Raina, quite an interesting discussion you're having there in studio. Quite enriching with a lot of content, and I'm hoping those at home who have the front seat in front of their televisions, and those of you watching on VTV, on YouTube, and streaming using the NTV website. This is quite an interesting discussion, and as Raina says, I have a farmer with me, John Bagada Winter, a very interesting name for a farmer, Winter. He is a mango farmer. He does that on large scale, but he's also a mixed farmer. He also does grow, of course, other crops. John, thank you very much for joining us.
Please.
Very quickly, I'm told you actually add value to your mangoes.
Yes.
All right. So you want to take us through exactly what you do with your mangoes?
Yeah. As I've told you that my name is Bagada John Winter, Director Busy Multiple Farm. It is multiple because we are involved in various activities. Majorly it is mango growing. We have banana growing, and also some cattle keeping. I started this business some 16 years ago, but along the way the yield went too high, so my mangoes could ripen and I get losses, a lot of it. That's why I ventured into value addition.
Is it because there was no market for your mangoes?
Well, the market was there,
no market for mangoes,
but
why would you lose?
When they are ripe, they tend to become soft.
Yes.
And that one you can't market.
Yes.
So with that one, it was always a waste.
Didn't you have other manufacturers of juice or other
No, we haven't got
products
one
in the market?
No,
All right.
there was no one.
Then you decided to add value. Yes.
Yeah. And
Is that for you? Was that for you not just a solution, but also another way you could actually make money from your mangoes?
of course, after venturing into value addition, I realized that I was making more money, and I could no longer lose any single mango. So in that one, I got a training through the Makerere Food Science and Technology. I was trained in juice making, wine making, and also jam. But the jam in the machine is not it is not sold enough. So I started to go to juice making. Then this very year I started wine making. I think I've realized much more benefit than before.
Take us through the challenges for you to transition from just being a farmer to to adding value to your product. What did it take for you to do that?
Of course, it requires some kind of investment. You need to sacrifice some of your resources to see that you go to that you venture that new of adding value.
So was that? Did you have to use your own savings, or did you actually have to go to a bank and get some credit?
It was my own savings.
All right. So you stayed away from credit.
No, actually, I didn't go for credit.
All right. Take us through your challenges. We don't have a lot of time. What are the challenges you face as a farmer who's actually trying to add value to your product?
First of all, they are the equipment. I could not begin, not until I had the required equipment to start, especially those machines to extract pulp. Then most of it must be stainless steel. The pasteurizer, because it must be pasteurized. This one must also be made out of stainless steel. Very expensive, but it was made locally here in Kampala. And another thing, the facility itself, the cleanliness and water. Those ones there. But time and again, I was supervised by Makerere University, Food Science and Technology, till they allowed me. But still, there was some money that I was given by DFCO Bank after winning in this Vision Group Farmers Competition.
Yes.
I was given some money. That one helped me to shut the premises where I work from. Basically, those are the major challenges that require the initial capital to begin. Yeah.
I have been told I really have no time, but I wanted to ask you, what are the quick fixes you'd need government to fix for you? What are the things you'd want us to address, government to address?
One, At my workplace, I don't have electricity. I use a generator.
So that's an increase in the cost of production.
And that is it.
Which you must put on the product you're selling.
But still, the product may not sell when take it too high, because the natural products are always expensive. So you consider the market. Then secondly, the water, tap water. It is some 2 kilometers from my point. The processing plant is at my farm.
Yes.
So that when I ferry water.
That's a cost.
It's
another cost. Yes.
It's a cost. Another one is that the pasteurizer used, it was fabricated. The one I used, it was fabricated here in Kampala, and takes 3 years span. Actually, now soon I'll require to have a new pasteurizer.
All right. I honestly would have wanted to continue, and John Bagada, I'm sure, has several other challenges he wants to share. He will be here with us, and we will try and engage him extensively. And you can watch our Seeds of Gold program, of course, where most of these farmers do share with us their experiences in value addition and what they're doing on the farm. Listen, the hashtag NTV Summit 17 is already trending. However, you too can be part of this conversation. And let me now turn to our social media team. Patricia is standing by. Patricia, what's happening online?
Thank you, Maurice. We're getting so much feedback online on Twitter and Facebook from our social media platforms at NTV Uganda. I'm going to sample a few tweets. There's Oworo Gambo tweeting, "In my view, we also need to support startups and innovators that look to solve some issues affecting the sector." Hontinka tweets, "Knowing now that 70% of employment can be gotten through agriculture, that incentives are being put in place to tap into the value-added chain." Just keep tweeting hashtag NTV Summit 17. Watch online at ntv.co.ug/live and download your VidTV app from Google Play Store. Back to you, Maurice.
Patricia. Patricia is the first time on TV, and I'm impressed on how she's doing. Patricia, you're quickly learning the steps on TV and how to do broadcast. Well done. Job well done. Continue tweeting. Share with us the hashtag NTV Summit 17. We will keep picking a couple of your comments, your questions. The moderator will actually, through the discussion later this evening, pick some of your questions and put them to the panelists later tonight as we delve deeper into the summit. I wanted to just mention, for those of you who are joining us, this summit is put together by NTV and our partners, PwC and the Ministry of Finance. We also have wonderful sponsors, Stanbic Bank, USAID, Umeme, Top Finance Bank, Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, Standard Chartered Bank, Uganda Manufacturers Association, Vivo Energy, and the China Construction and Communication Company. Well, Rainer John, you had John Bagada speak to us a short while ago, and he says, you know, he's adding value to his product, but he has some challenges, and he believes there's a couple of things that can be fixed. One, take energy to his place, so we're looking at connecting energy to his factory or his farm. He's looking at access to water, clean water in his community. Water is 2 kilometers away, so he has to ferry water to his farm. And 3, the process for him to be able to acquire, you know, machinery that can actually last longer. So he would probably need long-term financing to be able to, you know, bring on board machinery that can produce better quality, but also give him more quantities for a longer period. Rainer.
You see, that discussion from the farmer, Mr. Dagada, is not very far from what we are discussing here, specifically because even at his stage where he has gone into value addition, the challenge of being able to keep his costs down, to ensure production, to ensure supplies from the farm and supplies to the market remain on the table. And back to the studio, Mr. Biaruhanga, sorry. There we go. These are people who are making effort to ensure that the vision, the economic vision of transforming Uganda into a total and industrial country by a certain point in time, which we all know, is achieved. What are your thoughts? How best can he anchor himself at the point where he says he has to spend money, you know, pulling water from his farm, yes, to spend a little more in terms of fuel to ensure that his generators are running. Your thoughts and reaction to his insights?
Well, we congratulate the farmer actually. You see, when I was talking about incentives, not distorting, you can see this guy is driven by the understanding of how things work and how he can tap into the opportunities and make money.
Sure.
It's unfortunate that he's operating at high cost because he's in a location where all these facilities are not. And there is no doubt that government is prioritizing the issue of power. And now actually the biggest challenge government has, it's not that we are going to be able to produce power. The power production is assured. But now the challenge is actually to distribute it, to transmit it and distribute it. Now transmission and distribution should now become the priority, because in terms of projection, we are projecting adequate power generation, given all these dams which are coming on board. So I think, and the discussion is changing now within the corridors and boardrooms of government, that we need to address power transmission, distribution, and maintenance of those facilities. And I believe, without preempting what the next budget will be, but I believe those will be among the priorities. Of course, there are still challenges in terms of location of these industries, because depending on how far he is from a power grid, it may be viable or not viable to invest in a power line, but a solution must be found. And that's why actually government had the idea of these industrial parks. They have had their own challenges, but it was a good idea, and it is still a good idea if we can make it better and perfect the development of industrial parks. Because it could be easier to bring similar processing or value addition facilities in one location and bring all these services there and make sure that there is uninterrupted supply of power and water. So these are some of the considerations, but given his unique circumstances, it may be the only option would be to see how you give him power. But I think I'm not in a position to know how best that can be done. But just to assure you that actually government for power, it's a priority. Distribution is not going to be, is going to be the next agenda. The only thing is for us to come up with a spatial mapping of where this power goes, because we should not just take power lines and then no one consumes it. Okay, it also goes to the issue of demand.
All right.
So we may need to get more information on how we map the spatial distribution of this power.
Sure.
We take it where it will be consumed, so that the investment is worth it.
All right. Mr. Kamgasha, apart from the issue of power and water that Mr. Dagada spoke about, he says he sources machinery from Katwe. But you see the challenges that some of your incubators go through. Out in the field, how best, that's my question to you now, how best do farmers like Mr. Dagada can be helped? Or how best can they help themselves? Is it affordable financing that's a bit flexible for them to be able to cover some of these expenses? Is there a need perhaps for a specific, stimuli kind of package, maybe $500 million from government to help people in the value chain? Because once the value chain of processing collapses, the effort of the farmer is wasted, and the market will only continue receiving the inputs, which we so much need to get away from, now that we even have BOOP.
Yes, first of all, I'm very glad that he's been able to make the transition from farmer to processor. And as my neighbor here said earlier, the road of handouts will not take us very far. And we found that our highest successes in terms of incubation of enterprises, startup companies, has been those of people who believe and are somehow invested, at the very least in terms of first level production, compared to I have an ideas. Right. Those ones have tended to last the course and actually be very successful. Yes, the first point was to go to an incubator, the Makeri Food Technology Incubator, which actually Uganda Industry Research Institute played a key role in starting up, having run our own for quite some time. But I think the focus is not really all about financing. It's about the total project and getting things right from the very beginning. Because what we're talking about here is appropriate technology. And it starts with what is my market, what is my product, or what is my product spectrum. If I'm doing dairy, am I looking at yogurt, pasteurized, skimmed? And then you filter through that and you make sure that you get the right technology. Yes, in some cases, if I'm just milling maize flour, maybe the technology from Katwe might work. But if I'm making a product for export, then I have to really look at appropriate technology. Now that in itself is loaded, and when we are incubating people, that's one of the areas where we train them. What is appropriate? How much energy does it use? How much skill does it require? And do you have the skill? Yes. So we do a lot of industry skills training to make sure that people can use technology. Because I've been to plants and factories around this country, and you find they've been out of production for 6 months, and you say, what's wrong? And you find it was the fuse. Because they didn't have the technical competence to troubleshoot, maintain. So there's a lot of installed capacity which is not doing what it ought to be doing.
Very true.
Partly because of not understanding what I have, and in some cases technology shopping rather than transfer. So at Euro you focus on technology transfer, which includes the machinery, the equipment, and also the know-how. So we really try to drive that. So in his case, if an appropriate technology had been picked, sometimes it's the skill. You have, I don't know, 2,000 liters, but you get a processing line for 10,000, and then it becomes unwieldy, and you simply can't be cost effective.
Thank you. I'll come to Mr. Nkandu just before I go for a break. You talked about thousands, maybe hundreds of farmers that you've been able to collect, your members, in terms of an organized farmer group that produce, you know, to the factory, and then, you know, for value addition to the market. Sustainability. How sustainable is that in your experience?
Good.
So that we can guarantee that the model can work for other parts of the country, and work around the theme that we're discussing today on job creation as well.
Good. As he put it, the bottom line is that you have to work from the market backwards. What we have done is that we analyzed the entire coffee value chain, and we know very well at what point are we getting, what are the difficulties. We have invested big time in the entire coffee value chain. Whatever that you can talk about in this country, you know, to provide as far as coffee is concerned, we have done it. Is it to grade the coffee, which is supposed to be a simple thing for the usual coffee to be exported? Is it to roast the coffee? Is it to grind the coffee? Is it to package the coffee to any state of the art that is required? We have done that, and then we have looked at the skills set which is necessary from what we have been used to in terms of primary production now to, you know, processing the coffee, and then to go further to look at the real entrepreneurial skills, you know, for people that are working within the entire system, you know, to be well coordinated, that this set of skills links up very well with the other set of skills, and as we integrate ourselves, you know, in the international market. So we have done that, and that's why through testing here and here globally, we have found our coffee, you know, packaged, you know, finished product to be, you know, acceptable to the customers, and we believe this is very, very important. But we have taken it a little further. For us in our organization, we know that we needed to work with other partners to ensure that we can continuously be a learning organization, and therefore sustainability was something that was embedded right within our strategy. It is part of our business model, and as we link up with the various partners, then it is real. So our business model is now picked up globally, and many organizations have picked on it, and I'm glad that now even the academia has, you know, picked on it, because we felt it necessary that we get back to our universities and say, look critically at the curriculum of those that graduate as agriculturists. See what they are studying and how relevant it is to the job market. And we have done that with Makerere University to ensure that, the ivory towerness is completely out, and that's why we had to set up an agribusiness incubator owned by Makerere University, my organization, New Cafe, and NARO. And why these three? To ensure that technologies that come out of NARO, they can be picked up for commercialization.
Okay.
And then also tap into the knowledge power of the university.
Okay.
And as New Cafe, the farm organization, in this case the business organization, do the job for the business. Recruit more young people whom we have within the organization as employees, but also as entrepreneurs. So the whole thing of sustainability, and of course working with the other partners, development partners who have worked with ABI Trust. We have gone to the bank, we borrow money and we pay back. Of course the difficulties are part of the whole business.
Okay. All right. So we'll be taking a short break to return back to this discussion.
This is NTV Economic Summit 2017.
Vivo Energy is the company that distributes and markets Shell fuels and lubricants in Uganda. We are actually present in 16 markets in Africa. And our propositions is to offer our customers the best quality products and an unforgettable experience when they come into our forecourts. The products we market are gasoline, diesel, and we have very specific products like V-Power, which is gasoline for high quality engines. And we of course market other conveniences on our forecourts. As a company, we are also concerned about the sustainability of the businesses and the jobs that are associated with these businesses. The way it can be achieved is the environment to offer the best conditions for companies to grow, and also to take care of this environment. The companies have the responsibility as well to make sure that while they are doing their business, they keep the place safe for newer generations, for younger generations to also continue to enjoy the business they are doing.
Super Friday, your life is about to change. At a fantastic discount, get yourself land with a ready land title and build your dream house. Mtale Commercial Company Limited has discounted the 50 by 100 plots of land in their Victoria Lakeview Country Home Estate. Tune into Morning at NTV this Super Friday. Pay 9 million Ugandan shillings and instantly get your land title. It's a merry, merry Super Friday.
When they flip and roll and start to crawl away, tape diapers can be hard to put on and can come loose. Then it's time for Pampers Pants. With all-round fit, they're easy to pull on even when they're moving around. Pampers Pants absorb wetness rapidly and lock it away better for up to 12 hours of dryness. So when they start to crawl, you know it's time for Pampers Pants.
Now available in low counts at only 7,000 shillings per pack.
To the A to the D to the I to the A-N-T. I sparkle by the day. I like the world with the shine on my hair. Every girl wants to be rare. We want to shine like a golden flare. Your hair is your crown. Hey ladies, are you radiant? Marvel at my hair. Radiant still cares. With my hair so rare, like a shiny glare. Yeah, I love my hair. Radiant, flossy, bouncy, sometimes curly, manageable. Here we go. Radiant Men strengthens, pampers, nurtures your hair. I've got a distinct vibe. It's a radiant hair affair. Radiant. Look good, feel great.
Mujewali, I'm helping Ugandans make the smart choice. Why choose this powder?
It cleans just like any other ordinary detergent.
Ariel gives you better stain removal in one wash, even with less powder.
It can't be.
Observe grass, tea, and chocolate drink.
I'll need 1, 2 handfuls.
And just 1 handful of Ariel. See? Better stain removal with only 1 wash.
It's the smart choice for sure.
Ariel removes tough stains in 1 wash.
I want to talk as a businessman to you, or as a business person. Anytime anybody goes to borrow money, you have looked at the feasibility of the product that you're going to sell. What is the demand going to be? You're hoping that there's going to be a demand, and I'm assuming that you got your money at good costs with good tenure. So you've done your homework. Now, with this example of power, if the manufacturers or the industrialists are going to be your customer, you need to make sure that you have more customers to take up what it is that you are providing, which is power. So in order for the power or any costs to come down, it's got to be demand driven. So there should be people who are able to take up whatever it is that you're going to supply. In order for the costs to come down on the power, we as industrialists have got to be able to consume it. At the moment, we are at 54% of our capacity utilization, taking up 70% of the power that is generated. And when I talk about us, I'm talking about industries, and I'm talking about agro industries and all those industries, all put together. If these industries could actually increase their capacity, all right, their capacity utilization, then obviously we could take up more power, we could bring the costs of consumption, we would provide you basically with a market to take up the power that's generated, and would also make it then cheaper. But we also are counting on the fact that on the backside, we have negotiated as a government, as a country, good loans to bring this money in. We can get to 90% once again also with us getting the demand, and that's what leads us to the other issue on local content and the local content bill. We believe that if we as industrialists pay 30% of our taxes of URA, now if you want more taxes, you want us to actually do better business and want us to grow. So make sure that you can buy more of our products. And when I say more of our products, I'm actually speaking directly to the government and government institutions. If they can increase the consumption of our products, that will increase our capacity utilization of our companies, and thus generate more, need more power, consume more power, and the whole employ more people, and so on, pay more taxes, and so on and so on. So it's all a vicious cycle.
One thing I like about Ugandan people, they love what is worth their money.
You look good tonight.
Log in for the glitz and glamour.
Them call me Aganaga.
I don't want to say there's any extra about me. I'll just simply say I thank God for everything that happens in my life.
The pomp and the most flamboyant people and events.
I'm not going to say we lost.
We are on the same team, meanwhile.
We won.
Vinka the boss man, and you're watching Login Extra.
To some people, singing is a career. To me, singing is a hobby.
Every Wednesday, 8-5 p.m.
Love you, everybody. Straight away. Love you, Tina. For some reason, your boyfriend calls me his worst nightmare.
I have no boyfriend, guys. Disclaimer.
Login Extra. Every Wednesday, 8-5 p.m. Only on NTV.
We could do this all night.
Hey yo, what's up? It's the illest show that rocks your weekend, that kickstarts your weekend. We come through with 1,000 gigahertz of energy.
As they bring you some mad DJ skills and crazy video mixes.
It's the illest TV show. This is Exposed. We come through every single Saturday, 1:30 to 3 p.m.
Remember to call in with your music requests
right here on NTV. So make sure you catch us 1:30 to 3 p.m. Exposed, live in your face. We are the show and the business. Exposed.
Swalla la la, drink. Swalla la la, swalla la la.
You are watching NTV Economic Summit 2017.
Welcome back. You're watching our very extensive coverage of the NTV Economic Summit. We're coming to you live from Katonga Hall here at the Kampala Serena Conference Center, where the NTV Economic Summit will be held starting at 5 p.m. We will be expecting our invited guests to begin streaming in at about 5 p.m. The live debate on TV should start after 6 p.m. That should be very interesting because we have industry captains here. Government, the technocrats from government who will also be here, who literally drive government policy on matters economy. So the Minister of Finance, which is a co-convener of the summit, is well represented here, and we'll have the senior government officials from the ministry here, doing what the ministry says this year. Will be listening to the private sector and find some solutions around how to find a sustainable growth of our economy. And with the theme, when you say sustainable growth of the economy with jobs, that becomes very interesting. However, I wanted to mention that we are now transitioning from agriculture, a discussion that was held a short while ago with my colleague Reno John in studio with some of the experts in agriculture in that space. That transition is going to happen now. We move to energy. And so the discussion with the energy experts who are right now in studio with my other colleague, Charles Boji, will be on how to mitigate that gap between supply and demand and where the loose ends. That discussion is coming up shortly. But I also have our very own business editor, Sam Setumba. Sam Setumba is standing by right at the entrance of the conference center, where his role is to let us know exactly what happens next. So you come in, you're an invited guest. What do you do? Where do you go? And what do we expect when you come in for this discussion? What's on the table for any invited guest? What are they looking out for, and what should they be interested, and why should they even come to be part of this economic summit? Samuel Setumba, you are at a very strategic position. You want to tell us what's happening there?
Maurice, well, we are still in the preamble to the main event, which is coming at starting at 5, and then 6, of course, we will kick off the main event. And I'm standing by the steps which lead us to the Katonga Hall in Serena Conference Center, where the main event will be. And as you said, the next discussion is going to be about energy. We've just heard about agriculture. And these are the 3 areas: agriculture, agro-industrialization, energy, and the cost of doing business are the areas that we chose for this summit to discuss on how we can have sustainable growth with jobs over the next 10 years. And the next panel in the studio is energy. And what viewers can expect about the discussion is, so in the next 2 years, we are going to have about 800 megawatts of power being added to the grid. And the ambition is to even do more. But now the mismatch is we are going to have the energy, but now what's going to happen to consumption, the demand? Who's going to demand for that energy? And how do you ramp up the demand? We are hoping that the discussion in the studio will help us on that issue. And of course, the other big issue, if you ask the industrialists, is the cost of power. Partially, the cost of power is embedded in the cost of production, or what is previously agreed in the agreements, power purchasing agreements. So how do we bring down the cost of power to make sure that people who want to use it like industry can do so? Because one of the biggest costs today in industry, today, if you ask the manufacturers, is the cost of power. So we are looking forward to the panel in the studio to unravel these issues. We have great people there. I know the moderator, Charles Boji, will explain to us who's in the studio. But we know they have some answers to this effect. We have a regulator, we have somebody in generation, we have somebody in distribution, and we have users. We are looking forward to hearing from them on the solutions. Remember, this summit is not about lamentation or spelling out problems. We know the problems. We want to hear solutions on how energy can now be a real enabler to the end that we have sustainable growth so as to have jobs. And we're looking possibly at the next 10 years. So I will now hand over to my colleague in the studio, Charles Boji, to proceed with the discussion to find some answers to those questions.
Thank you very much, Samuel. And indeed, that sets the stage for, ladies and gentlemen, this evening's discussion. And you're very right, Samuel, because energy really is a very critical element. It's something that really drives the economy. It's the thing that oils the wheels. And Sam Setumba in the studio with me and our viewers. I have none other than the MD, Umeme, Mr. Celestino Babunji. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles.
Yes. Then I also have Martin Cheyune from Uganda Manufacturers Association, a user. You're most welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much.
And then I have David Isingoma from UEGCL. You're most welcome, David.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I have John Walugembe from Micro, Small, Medium, and, Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises Association in Uganda. You're most welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Charles.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but we'll find a way of, reducing that, briefing it. Now, viewers will be looking at energy, as already mentioned. Just to give you a little brief, is that energy really is very critical, is at the center of production and productivity, because we need it for manufacturing. The previous debate was looking at agriculture, and agro-processing was featuring quite prominently in that debate. So we need energy to actually make this happen. We need energy for high-end manufacturing. We need energy, to really live a good life, whether for lighting, whether for, all kinds of appliances, TV, and the like. And because of this, government prioritized this sector and heavily invested in it. Over the past, 3 to 4 financial years, we've seen a hefty portion of the budget going into energy-related infrastructure. We've seen, major dams coming up. We've also seen small dams coming up. And like my previous colleagues mentioned, as a result of this, we've seen power supply and production, jumping to about 680 megawatts today. And of course, there are major questions today. Has this jump in production, spurred the economic activity which was promised at the start? Has it in any way touched the issue of, power tariffs, coming down? Well, those are some of the issues that we'll be looking at with my panel. But before we go into, the depth of the debate, I want us to look at this little feature which will set the tempo for our discussion. Good evening and enjoy.
cost of power is 1,000 times than what the Chinese or Kenyans do. You find your produce cost of delivering 250 grams packed hot pepper that is very good in quality, produced in Uganda, packed in Uganda, to be sold in Uganda. You find your cost is 1,000, but you find a product from Kenya, product from China, on the market on sale 500 shillings. Government should think about protectionism, protecting their own citizens, because there is no way the farmer will produce goods in Ibanda, in Kamwenje, in Tororo, and then he delivers into the market in Kambara, and his is cheap, is more expensive than somebody who is producing goods in Mount Kenya. We ask ourselves, how do Kenya produce the cheese they sell cheaper in Uganda? How the Akabanga in Rwanda produce and sell it cheaper than ours in Uganda? How Chinese from, I don't know how many, I think maybe it's 10,000 miles, I don't know, because I've not gone to China. They deliver here half of our cost. How is it possible?
When you look at our neighboring countries like Kenya, we feed them with food. When you look at South Sudan, Juba, we feed them with food. So the market is big, but the problem, the production is still low because of our farming systems.
Sometimes I sit in this office, I want to cry. The customer in Italy wants, the customer in France wants, but I cannot deliver because the one in England wants so much. I cannot even also fulfill. And then they say, our market. Which market? And also we are selling their substandard goods. We are trying to polish it because we do not have what I've told you, cold chain. The farmers' extension services is still low. We have 5 degree holders in Horticulture who are doing our agronomy, but there are a few. When you calculate 5 agronomists to over 1,000 people, farmers, it's too low. But what can we do? This is our pack house, it's empty, no produce. This is our, where is our factory? Our factory is, even I think the camera has gone off. But these all, we put state-of-art places to pack produce, but it's not there.
For example, if the farmer is interested, if a group of farmers is organized and they are interested in doing value addition, the government can come in and give them support in terms of cheap capital. For example, if they are the mango farmers, they could buy processing plant for the farmers, and the farmers pay back over time, but a lot at a slower interest rate compared to the available commercial rates from these commercial banks.
Well, welcome back, dear viewers. It's again the 2017 Economic Summit, NTV Economic Summit, under the theme Triggering Uganda's Economy Through Sustainable Growth with Jobs. And this panel discussion we're having this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is tackling the issue of energy, which sits at the confluence, at a very important confluence to spur this economic activity mentioned. Now, Celestina, I'll start with you for this discussion. You heard the man in that feature you've just watched. At first he's just lamenting about the cost of power. Yeah. In fact, he's saying, I don't know whether that is true, that Uganda's power is 1,000 times more than the cost, that is, more than that of China. But the point I want us to, kick this discussion with is we've seen an increase in production and supply of power. Like I mentioned in my preamble, from around 317 megawatts to around 680 megawatts. So one would think, the economics rules would apply there, that with more supply, maybe the prices will be a little more managed. I don't know. From where you sit, why haven't we seen, that response of prices coming down with the increase in supply? Are they high anyway?
Okay, thank you, Charles. I think the pricing of electricity should be looked at from a number of perspectives. For example, the industrial consumers now pay an average of 10 US cents. Okay. Right? But also, you look at it from a historical perspective, that Uganda pre-reforms, we had only one dam built in 1954, right? As a donation from, I'm told it was a donation, which the next big dam to be commissioned was Bujagali, 250 megawatts of power, using private capital. Now, when you compare the two, the other one had been fully amortized, this one is new, and you're amortizing it, chances are that there's a likelihood that the cost of the current dam will be slightly higher than the old one. Yes, it's true. Our effective generation in the country is around 680 megawatts. But effective demand is 570 megawatts. The only difference there is what we have in that 680 are thermal plants. Let's not be, the thermal plants are expensive if tuned on, right? So if we are using those thermal plants, chances are high that potentially the tariff would be slightly higher than where it is now. We are blessed that we are using generation from hydro plants. So, but the path forward for this electricity pricing is, and the government has been looking at it from a number of dimensions. For instance, reviewing and refinancing of Bujagali, which may reduce the average generation cost from 13 cents to, I don't know where it will end, but potentially around 8 or 9, I'm not privy. But also the new dams coming on stream, Karuma and Isimba at 5 cents, that will play a big role in significantly helping to reduce the end user tariffs, which of course will make the country very, very competitive at the moment. But again, we look at pricing of electricity from another, because it's a cost over units sold equation, right? So the fundamental question we should ask ourselves, how do we minimize the cost upstream, and how do we increase the base on which we are spreading these costs? A number of interventions have to come in, for example, creating demand, driving efficiencies, using low-cost capital, you know, in terms of plants, spreading the cost of the financing over a longer period. All those, if played around right, can reduce the cost of electricity in the country.
I hear you. Yeah. Okay, I'll get back to you on that. But at this moment, I'll bring in Martin from the user side. You from Uganda Manufacturers Association. Sure. Yeah. How do you view, the pricing of our power? Is it, at the level where you'd say it can drive economic activity?
Okay, thank you very much. We've seen the price of power going down a little bit gradually, looking at the economic parameters. And again, as Celestino commented, that there are a number of factors that affect the power pricing. And the economic factors of FX, foreign exchange, and fuel prices have helped to subsidize a little bit. But still, there's some work to be done. Okay. Currently, if we look in manufacturing, we have two processes mainly. We have cold processes whereby there is no heating involved, and then the heating processes. If you look at the total cost, including the cost of raw materials together and the cost of power, the cost of production, the percentage of power cost to the total cost is about 15% in a cold process. In a hot process, it goes up to about between 35 and 40%, which is a little bit high. But we know that the initiatives that need to be done rely much, at least for the moment, on capacity utilization. Industries are operating at about 54%. Now, again, if we produce more, the percentage of power cost on the total cost of production goes lower. And therefore, we need to push our products into the market, ensure that initiatives like the Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, export promotion are actually activated, and they are forefront for making sure that the power cost goes down.
So you're saying other interventions have to be activated to support you to produce more, so that you're able to, grow capacity and utilize this power, so that the unit cost can come down.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, David, let me come to you. In his submission, Celestino mentions a very important aspect. Of course, he acknowledges the fact that we have, which I'm sure we all do, agree with, that we have, excess capacity at the moment. I was looking at the numbers. It's about 100 megawatts from the numbers that I looked at. And again, I was looking at the same numbers, and it was showing that thermal production is about 100 megawatts. So, and from his submission and from what I know is that thermal is quite expensive compared to hydro. And I was wondering, why should we continue producing thermal, which again feeds into, the pricing, or drive it up, if you like, of power, when we have that deficit? Since you're from generation, I'm sure you're well placed to really give us a digest on that.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. I think Celestine explained it well.
Okay.
Generation, we should put it in context. Okay. We have electricity generation company that manages particular projects. Then ERA, the regulator,
licenses other projects. For example, thermal, solar. That's why we see that we even have solar now in the energy mix. We have about 20 megawatts. We have thermal, as you said, 100 megawatts. So generation as a company, we are looking at mainly hydro currently, which is the Kiranalu Valley, the Owen Falls Dam. But I think the issue is, why do we have thermal in the mix? And I think it came out from our history when we had this terrible outage of power in 2006, 7, 8, where half the country was in a blackout. The government proactively had to take emergency steps. So they engaged what we call thermal plants. Thermal plants are advantageous in that they can be mobilized quickly in short term. But the problem is, as Celestine mentioned that perfectly, is that we find that the financing is of a longer term nature. What it is now is that even though these thermal plants are not being dispatched, but we have obligations to pay in terms of their financing. That's why we find that as much as possible, UETCL, which is the system system operator, has to keep these thermals in play. Thermals are like a backup now until their loan and debt servicing is completed, and then the thermals will be phased down. But for now, we have thermals as part of the energy mix. Coming to the issue, actually, for capacity for generation, we have about 900 megawatts. But as Celestine pointed out, that the effective availability is about 600. Maybe the next question is, we are getting into Karuma. Maybe I'm jumping to the next stage. We're getting into Karuma and Isimba. I think Karuma and Isimba was a right policy drive by government. What are we saying? Let's be forward-looking. Let's not be caught in the trap of the past, whereby we get, you know, the gestation period of any power project is 10 years. So we are saying, let us have this capacity available for future use. Now, some people say, but you'll have excess power. Yes, maybe in the short run, but I can bet you this power will be uptaken very fast. We already have prospective demand, the phosphate factory, the standard gauge railway. All these are already actually applying for not small amounts of power, 200 megawatts, 100 megawatts. But I think we shall go into further discussion. The issue is, how do we reticulate this power to the end user? So I think government has done the first part, which is availability, making sure that we have power available. Then the next issues will come up. I know the issue of affordability, the issue of transmitting it, as you said, to the end users, wherever they are.
Thank you very much, David. And this is the point where I want to bring in John, because John, you are a user as well. You represent a very strong segment within this economy. True. You know, the MSMEs. Correct. You know, from David's submission, you can clearly see that they are doing what they have to do. They are making the power available. Now the question is, you, the private sector, are you positioned or well positioned to actually make use of this power? For starters, is it affordable to you? Because the issue now is the pricing that we are discussing at this moment.
First of all, we need to appreciate the efforts that have been made. The mere fact that we have 100 megawatts of excess supply is good enough, and it should be appreciated. That said, we all recognize that the cost is still high. More so, if the large industries are complaining about the cost, you can imagine what the smaller enterprises will be saying. So I, as a representative of the small and medium enterprise sector, I would say government is doing a good job. We need to encourage it. However, they need to explore mechanisms of bringing the tariffs down, because if you don't bring the tariffs down, that's where now, because I looked at the demand figures, most of this electricity is going to households, not to industries. Industries are doing about 17%, but the bulk of what industries demand is electricity. On the other hand, households rely a lot on biomass energy, but then their demand for electricity is very low. So fine, we're increasing numbers, talking about increases from 400,000, 700,000, but if you're talking about generating electricity for economic growth, we need to focus on industry, we need to focus on SMEs, and the only way we can favor them is, one, bring the cost down.
Okay, yes. That's good. Celestina, I'll come back to you on this. We're now moving on to economic activity generally, and I want to focus mainly on the industrial or manufacturing sector. I remember in the early 2000s, of course, when we had these blackouts and the like that David was referring to, you know, there was a lot of discussion and, you know, comments about the fact that, you know, because we don't have, you know, reliable power, it's because industry was not performing well. However, when I looked at the figures from the Bureau of Statistics, from around 2013, 2014 to today, you know, industrial or manufacturing subsectors' performance has been more or less in a free fall of sorts. There's a huge, sharp fall, you know, in performance. And I'm beginning to wonder, because this is a time when we have a lot of power, fairly reliable, because anyone can actually agree that, you know, we now have, you know, less blackouts if they happen at all. And I'm asking you this purely as an economic observer and as well a major player, you know, within the economy. What do you think is missing there?
Well, that's a good question, Charles. I think when you're looking at these numbers, we tend to relate them. Also from our side as electricity distributor to Meme, we tend to look at these numbers. And we are not in an island. What we tend to see is when industries are facing challenges, I'll give an example. When the region, we had the issues in South Sudan, issues in Eastern Congo, some issues in Burundi, and we saw that our large manufacturers somewhat were affected in terms of market demand. We saw, and last year, we saw GDP growth came down up to 3.9. We saw actually the demand for electricity for that year grew by only 4.4%. Not that there was no power, the power was there. Not that the industries didn't want to produce, they wanted to produce. But as Martin indicated, the market is not enabling them. As he has indicated, some manufacturers are running at 54% production capacity. What if they were running at 100% capacity? GDP would just go up. So for me, when I look at these numbers, we tend to see there's a direct correlation between GDP growth, industrialization, and demand for electricity. For example, this year, we've seen the forecast from the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of and the Governor Bank of Uganda, indicating GDP growing at an average of 5 to 5.5% compared to the 3.9 of last year. For us, we have seen demand for electricity for industries growing at around 9%, and overall demand for electricity growing at 8%. So when I compare that, and I see that the manufacturers are demanding more, it means their markets are getting better and better, and therefore the economy will be doing better. So for me, from an energy perspective, we understand our responsibilities. Energy fuels the economy. And as indicated by your colleague John and Martin, Uganda shouldn't be seen, oh, there's so much power coming, therefore we should get worried. No, we shouldn't get worried. Only 22% of households have access to electricity. The per capita consumption is at 85 kilowatt hours. If to be at middle income status, you need to be consuming at least 500 kilowatt hours. So we are 6 times, we need to grow 6 times to catch up.
That's true.
And therefore, that calls for, yes, there are investments happening in the generation side. We must create investments in transmission, and also we must enable distribution infrastructure to be built up to reach the consumers, to reach the key economic zones, to overlay energy on our agricultural products instead of exporting to Kenya and processed maize. Why not process it here and send a ready product there? Then you create jobs here.
I hear you.
Yeah. So the demand for power is there. We need just to unlock it and
take it there. That's a discussion we're going to pick. But let me bring in Martin here. Martin, you've seen Celestino. He's giving you the power.
Yes.
Of course, there are other issues, other factors. I remember, especially your members, Zuma, during the early 2000s, were very vocal over the power, blackouts, and they're saying, you know what, these guys are the reason between us and our success and our competitiveness within East Africa. Now they've done their part. And you just shifting blame that now it's DR Congo and like someone would say so. Allow me to be the devil's advocate in this case. That you're just shifting goalposts every time there's, a solution to something.
No, thank you very much, Charles. It's actually first of all, let me first tackle the issue of excess power.
Yes.
And no demand for it.
Yes.
The demand for sure is there. It's not excess power. It is underutilized capacity. Just as we are facing capacity utilization, under capacity utilization in industrialization, also the power sector is facing underutilized capacity. If at 54%, we can take up 70%, then the question is, at 100%, how much can we take up?
Okay.
That leaves.
It's a good question.
It's a clarity. It's a matter of clarity. Now, on the issue of the issues facing industrialization, these issues evolve. We live in a global environment. Yes, there was a time power was not reliable. We did actually work hand in hand with the distributor, the regulator, and at times transmission to ensure that power reliability is assured, and that was sorted. It's no longer an issue on our agenda. But now the issues we face, yes, industries have come in. There is capacity. The issue is market, and we can see it in every household of a Ugandan. Probably, we could say that out of the 10 items in a room, the percentage of those items coming from Uganda are very few. And that is a concern that we need to address. Now, we move away from that and go to the export markets. What are the chances? The chances of getting, say, for example, a good from Asia or Europe in a Ugandan household are high. But what are the chances of having a Ugandan good in a South African home? Those are questions we need to sort out. And yet we are in a global environment. We've integrated as a country, but now we need to integrate internally, sort out these issues. They revolve around revenue for the industries and as well as cost for the industries. Power is not the only cost. There are so many other costs that need to be worked on, and that's how we look at it.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, I'll bring you in here as well, because remember, this topic is supposed to sit within the general theme for the NTV Economic Summit for this year, which is, of course, triggering economic growth and sustainable growth for that matter. I'd love to know, how many Ugandan companies are you engaging in the generation of electricity, from and I'm asking you this as a person who is keenly well placed and seated within this sector, because one time I was wondering, when we were reviewing the last financial year's budget, that at a time when government was committing a lot of resources towards infrastructure, roads, but then also power, dams and the like, we are seeing many players within the construction industry struggling. I think that was the year when roofings went under receivership and the others. So, which begs the question, are you engaging, if I may rephrase it, enough of local players, the Martins of this world, the Jones of this world, within, power generation and the entire equation of the power industry?
Maybe Mr. Moderator, the way the sector is structured, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, is that there are different players for different activities. Now, what you're asking is the issue of something that which is not within our jurisdiction as UEGCL, that is Uganda Electricity Generation.
That's why I was asking you as a person who is sitting within the sector, not as UEGCL.
But what we are seeing is, because maybe I have to understand your question, from the generation mix, from the generation side, we have private players and the public, which is government.
That's true.
The private players are actually playing a big role currently. We find that a number of new schemes are being commissioned, Nkusi and many others, which are actually being developed by indigenous Ugandans. Of course, in partnership maybe with some external help. But we find that today, of that capacity of about 900 megawatts that we have, if we remove Bujagali from the equation, that's 250 megawatts. That leaves us with about 650. We find that about 200
is by
250 actually is by private players, independent power producers. So they are playing quite a significant role. And if you go, there's an association of IPPs, independent power producers, which I think are doing a great job. So that is as far as power production is concerned. But I thought the question which also is linked to this is actually the issue of utilizing local inputs in the construction, for example. I think that's a key question, because we have these mega dams, we have Karuma and Isimba, and you know, it is something that came up. Government realized, I think it was a bit late, that yes, wait a minute, we're spending trillions, how much money is coming into the economy? And we signed these huge contracts with the Exim Bank of China, and I think that's where some mistakes could have been made, but I think they are trying to rectify them. Actually, as we speak now, many of these companies are being kind of encouraged to source like cement locally, steel locally. Actually, we sent a memo out to all steel manufacturers. I think Roofing's got our memo. We asked them, can you supply the quality of steel required for Karuma and Simba? And they were responded in affirmative. They said they could. You see, but you see, the issue is, it came at a stage where the dams are 60% complete. A lot of the steel structures have already been embedded. So that's why I'm saying maybe there was a bit of a delayed reaction to this aspect of buy Uganda, build Uganda, utilizing our local inputs. Because as we appreciate, most of this money goes out of the country. I think.
John, what's your take?
Well, first of all, my take is that, just to add something on what Martin said, entrepreneurship and the economy is an ecosystem. This is what they call it in biology. It's a system, it's a machine. If you just focus on power and you ignore the other aspects, the machine won't move. So I think we also need to look at the ecosystem that promotes entrepreneurship. How is it moving? Is it oiled? Is the policy framework okay? Is URA supporting entrepreneurs to work, or it's eager to hit its targets, and in the process it's hurting business? So I think we need to look at the overall policy framework to say, okay, how favorable is it? How favorable is it for business? The other issue, and just to about local content and so on, I think we shouldn't put our local manufacturers and contractors under a lot of pressure. Style up, can you provide or can't you provide? There has to be an element of capacity building. Just like the Chinese handhold their companies to come and compete here. That aspect has to be there. We can't just say, oh, this is a market-based economy. We did not invent the market-based economy. The UK, the US, they are all market-based economies. And somehow they help their own to succeed. Yes, and then maybe lastly, it's about this whole issue. For us, sometimes we focus a lot on the national grid. For us, SMEs, we operate from anywhere. So really expecting the national grid to reach the maize mill and so on is really, we're asking for too much. So I think we need to look at other avenues of creating microgrids and encouraging local energy generation, and then kind of interconnecting these microgrids with the national grid, so that there's that coexistence between the two.
Very good. Now, Celestino, I want to get back to you on the issue of, you touched it slightly, the issue of access to power, because you know it's one thing, like it's clearly seen here to have the power generated, and it's another thing to actually make it, repatriate it to the people who need this power. And I know that is still a challenge. And again, to touch a little on what John is submitting, I know there are so many players out there, especially in agro-processing and the like, who really have a problem accessing the national grid. I don't know, what strategies do you have as a distributor of power to actually ensure that this power, once produced, because in the next 2 years we are adding what? About 900 megawatts? Exactly, and we are struggling to actually distribute even what we have already. What strategies do you have to make sure that this power reaches the people it's supposed to reach?
Okay, thank you, Charles. For me, I look at the power equation. There are three things. You need access, you need economic use of this power to drive GDP growth, then the equation of affordability. They go in tandem. You can drive access, wheel the lines to each village. But if the household do not have sufficient household income, affordability becomes an issue. Therefore, we should tackle this challenge addressing the three things together. The issue he has raised of some processors may be off-grid. What we are saying, what we are advocating for is, instead of industries sharing lines, and we know 70% of the power is going to industries, struggling with the lines that are feeding households, the issue of industrial parks must be promoted. So that we can drive this power to one central place, industrial park. All industries come and plug and play, produce in one area, they have reliable supply all the time, then put incomes into people's pockets through job creation, then these people can afford electricity. So for us, we are saying the 25 industrial parks are a priority. Namamve, Kapeka, Mbale, Mbarara, all those industrial parks in Lira. The government should really focus on ensuring that they are ready. Not only for us from a power perspective, but ensuring the roads are there, the water systems are there, and also as a country, we must go on an international, or even internally, we should mobilize industrialists to go and set shop in those parks so that they can use this power and then increase household incomes. For me, I see that as very, very important. The other element they brought about was, yes, not about power and industries. No. Look at the latest economic report. Look at the growth of private sector credit to manufacturing. It's growing at 1%. When I sit back, I say, okay, we want to industrialize. Who is financing the industries? Is manufacturing growing? Are we allocating adequate capital there to grow? If it's growing by 1%, will I be surprised if I wait for the next 1 year and I don't see any industry coming up? So we have to address all the things, the policy framework, regulation, financing, other infrastructure, human capital, markets, protecting the Uganda market, advocating for Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, all those things as a suit will address and create demand for this electricity.
That's a good one. An ecosystem which John was actually referring to. Now, coming back to you, Martin, Celestino raises a very important, issue here, the issue of national, rather, industrial parks. And, there's something that really disturbs me with some of your members. I see factories dotted all over the place. You could have Namamve there, but just a few meters from Namamve, in those villages, Seta, Chiwanga, and the like, you're going to find an industry there, bottling something. And it presents a challenge from the distribution side of power. Because if Celestino feels that if you're in an industrial park, for manufacturers, and he knows this is now an area for manufacturing, it becomes easy for him to distribute power. I mean, why is it, what is the problem? Why do a number of manufacturers, why are they shunning these industrial parks?
Actually, the manufacturers are not shunning away from industrial parks. What we have, an industrial park should be a conducive environment. And as we said, it has to have all the amenities in place, including communication, power, water, communication, and also, say for example, solid waste or affluent treatment plants. That should be in place. What we see is developing, but at a low pace. If we look at Namamve is filled up, actually. If you go to ask for land in Namamve today, you won't find that land there. It's filled up. They're calling for more industrial parks. There is one near UNBS, the Boyogere Industrial Park. It's also filled up. As small as it is, it's filled up. And I think these are kind of things we need to look at. Why a manufacturer would go somewhere around Mukono? Because he knows, at least around Mukono area, there is a substation that is having industries, for example. He's probably assured that power will be okay. He will get amenities of water and all these kind of other utilities. But we need to sort out something. A lot of regulation has to be done in these matters. And one of the contentious things probably is one of the land laws.
The land laws as well.
Yes.
But before you get there, maybe I need to pose this to Celestine again. Do all the industrial parks in Uganda, they're about what, 25?
Yes.
Do they have reliable power at this moment? The kind of power they need to do the activities?
At the moment, there are different stages of development. I can say Namamve is at a higher stage. Compared, for example, to Mbale that is currently being set up. Compared to Kapeka, where now we are seeing industry setting up and we are trying to will power there. But also from a planning perspective, we've seen, for example, as Martha has indicated, some industries set themselves up along Bombo Road. Now, Bombo Road had never been configured to take industries. So you find that a manufacturer is on the end of the line, right? And therefore is having challenges. UAE has done the right thing. They've set up what they call a one-stop center. And we as women have seconded one of our staff to be there. So that when an industrialist comes, we say, an industrialist wants reliable power at the right quality, right voltage. It's prudent for you, don't set up here. If you want reliable power of this capacity, go and set shop in this area, so that we can have guided, coordinated investments and direction of these industries.
I hear you. John, on that aspect, because I know now this is your area, the issue of access, to electricity or power for that matter. I know you have quite a number of people within your umbrella organization.
True. Well, I like the ideas that are being proposed, but I don't agree with them. One, when people are setting up businesses, it's their personal decision. They have a financial calculation behind it. Fine, they need electricity, but they also have other considerations. They are probably taking out a loan and so on. So if you look at the cost of land in Namanve, and you look at the cost across the road in Chiwanga, it's probably 50% less. Why? What is the problem? Is it because ideally the industrial park should even be cheaper? Because we expect some kind of subsidy. You understand? So that's where you see, now if you drive along Bombo Road, and you give a very good example, you see a vibrant industrial park taking shape organically. So maybe we need to sit back and say, okay, what are we not doing right? Should we allow market forces, as we like to say? Why don't we allow market forces to take root, and then we encourage people? And we take the electricity where the industries are, as opposed to directing industrialists
to a desert or something.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, David, what's your take? I'm sure you're keenly watching these developments in the economy as a supply of a key production factor in that respect.
I think the point on which Mr. Babungi has raised here is the issue of reduced costs. Because if we are to follow every industrialist to where he has the cheapest land, it's not cost effective. And I think that's what government is trying to do. Why don't we make these units industrial parks where we have all these utilities, and it becomes cheaper and cost effective. Now the issue of increased costs that my colleague is mentioning here is, now, are you taking into account the water, electricity, the telecoms, whatever, all those costs being brought to your place, and yet you find them already in this industrial park. That's why you find the unit cost of land is slightly higher in the parks, because you already have these facilities. And you may look at it as a higher cost in terms of the land, but it's actually, if you make you do the calculations, you may find it's cheaper because you already have these facilities on the ground. So I think it's really a trade-off. I know people have their own land, as he said, and I agree with him totally, because these are family businesses. The man says, but this is my ancestral land, why can't I use it? Instead of going to the other park, where I have to pay something. So I think there's an opportunity cost in either case. That's what we have to look at. I mean, it's simple. It's like saying, I rather use water from a pond than piped water from National Water and Sewage Corporation. But people don't know that, especially if it's a consumptive factory which uses the water for drinking, that maybe the issues of quality come up. Is that water of good quality? Or now even the issues of electricity. The issue is, if you have good electricity within the industrial parks of good quality and voltage, those are already advantages for manufacturers. But of course, this is subject to debate, and I don't disagree with when you are doing your business. First thing first is it's me, not the country policy.
I hear you. Martin, you seem to want to say something on that.
Well, I do welcome, personally, a competition in thought. Yes, we may say that, yes, this is family land, and I can set up here cheaply based on the cost of land. But yes, there are other costs that come
with it.
But we know, at least from experience, we've operated as a. We've seen manufacturers who are set up in industrial parks, and also we know manufacturers who are set up in different areas. It's easier to bring services to the parks, because you have a coordinated voice. If the regulator of the power industry looks at it, it's cheaper for an investment to go to a dedicated area for industries than taking a whole line to one industry somewhere. In a zone, even Nura 8, I mean even UNRWA itself, if it's to do a road, it is cheaper for them to go and serve a park than one industry at the end of the road.
The line.
Yes. So I think that's something we need to appreciate as a country, that yes, economies of scale do actually interpret into lower cost of production.
Something I don't understand, and I want you, John and Martin, to help me understand this, because from the discussion we've had, it's clear that this is, especially these industrial parks around Kampala, filling up. Boyogerere, you just said it's almost done. Namamve is almost done. And I know the people who sit in industrial parks are industries, they're manufacturers. And at the same time, we're again seeing manufacturing activity coming down and that kind of thing. What explains that? Where's the disconnect? In other words, are all the guys there really manufacturing?
Well, some of them are constructing. Some of them are just constructing, but the land has already been taken up. They have feasibility studies, and they're in the process. So you won't find an empty piece of land. That's for sure. Manufacturing activity is about the entire market as it is. Them being near the market, we know they're filled up because Kampala presents itself as an area where most services are. If you want banking services, if you want, financial services, if you want a liaison with the utilities, the tax authorities, you're best placed in and around Kampala. From an integrated approach, if these are taken to other areas, yes, we could see the parks also being filled up in that area. And also, let's not forget the issue of the connectivity to the markets. That's quite key for these other parks also.
access to energy a major driver in this? Maybe just to make a rejoinder. I want to say that I'm a very ardent supporter of industrial parks. As a matter of fact,
yes,
I put UIN under a lot of pressure to construct SME parks, and I wish to say that they have actually taken the proposal up, they are pushing it with a lot of vigor, so they're doing a good job. That said, we should also recognize that initially there was some speculation in the industrial park, and UIA took time to clean out those things, and that affected the progress of the park. Now, as to whether industrial activity is increasing or not, I would say that for our sector, our people have to run their businesses as a matter of survival. They have no choice. They can't say, oh, the business environment is so difficult, let's close shop. No, they have to run this because it's survival. Yeah,
I hear you. Maybe at this moment, I really wanted you to tackle the issue of power losses, but we have to take a very short commercial break. Dear viewers, it's the 2017 Economic Summit, NTV Economic Summit, and it's happening. It's happening here at the Serena Hotel, and this is part of the activities we are doing to really rub this through, especially the theme, which is triggering Uganda's economy through sustainable growth with jobs. My director just told me that we are winding up at this because we will have to catch up with activities at the Serena and of course other activities. Dear viewers, we have a lot coming for you on this. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening I've been joined by Celestino Babunji, the MD Umeme, and Martin Cheyune from WOMA, David Singoma from EGCL, and David Walugembe from Uganda Small Scale Micro, Small, Medium Enterprises Federation. Correct. You're most welcome, and it's been nice having you, gentlemen. Viewers, it's been nice having you. I've been your host, Charles Woji. Have a good evening.
watching NTV Economic Summit 2017. Triggering Uganda's economy, sustainable growth with jobs.